What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of All Things ADU and Real Estate, aka Steph Sells Homes podcast. This podcast is sponsored by 10K Cards, which is a digital platform that I personally use, which is why I always like to give a shout out to Sean for helping me elevate my marketing game. And so he sponsors every episode. And also shout out to my friend Joseph at ADU Insider. He also sponsors these episodes. So super thankful for the community that we've been able to build. And today, we're going to get right into it. This is episode 24 of season 2. I did a few episodes last year and took a break. I was focusing on a lot of the meetups and, the market and where we're at. And so now I'm super excited to have my first guest on season 2, which is Nate at Soho Construction. What's up, Nate?
What's up? What's
Welcome
going
to the
on?
show.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Honestly, man, so a little bit about Nate. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, but I'll tell you guys that we just had an event which was super amazing. Probably one of the best ones that I've done year to date, honestly. And it was very dope vibes. We made a lot of great connections. We really just we're super intentional with it. And so for those of you who missed out, we have shared a lot on Instagram. So make sure you guys check that out. And I might upload like a full episode on YouTube just so that people get a glimpse of what we were able to do, right? And so, kind of just to backtrack a little bit, do you want to share with people who you are, how this all came about, and how we're even here today?
Yeah, thanks for the good introduction. So like you were talking about, I'm with Soho Construction. My name is Nate. And we kind of started, it was speaking of tech, of which are our topic today. Like we just met through Instagram. I saw that you had done a meetup. It was something that we have tons of clients who are starting to build ADUs and asking more about ADUs. We have so many coming from like the Bay Area where it's just such a big thing right now. And I saw what you were posting and that you just put on an event. We were like, heck yeah, like we want to do that too. I think we want to get our names out there more, especially in Solana Beach community, because a lot of the people in this community just like to work with local businesses. They are very interested in like progressing Solana Beach and letting people know like, hey, this is a great place to be. It's not just all about Del Mar and La Jolla in San Diego. Like, Solana
Right.
Beach is another perfect part of town. I think it's just an underrated area. And we have such a great kind of like the design district here. And like when you came, there's just so
It was
many different
beautiful.
stores, so
I
many
loved
different
it.
places. Like, yeah.
I'm
And
definitely gonna go back and surf. Now that I'm
yeah,
surfing, I will
great
go
surf. That's for
back.
sure.
It is a gem, and what's crazy is that it was a little bit of manifesting there because when I did my last meetup in Old Town, San Diego, I took the train, and on the way back, I was always taking the train back and forth from Long Beach to or Anaheim to San Diego. But that particular time when we came back, we stopped by Solana Beach, and I just thought to myself, like, how dope would it be if I can find like a local shop here where we can do a meetup here? Because my goal is to do meetups all down the coast and kind of keep that same theme of ADU meetups, right? So then when you reached out on Instagram, we took massive action, guys. Like it was very dope to see how ideas and creating a good turnout was really just from a DM. It really that's how it came about. You DM me on Instagram. I called you back. We had a very great conversation and we were just in a full alignment. I went out to your office and then boom, like 35, 45 days later, we had an event of like almost 100 people, but it started off with the thought and taking massive action. So, what is your background like? Tell me a little bit more about that because clearly, we're action takers here. So I always like to know like how did you get to be the person that you are today? How did you even get into real estate or construction and all that good stuff?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that all happened within 3 days of that story you were talking about. Like, it was boom, boom, boom. We were just
Mhm.
in and out, and you were here, and then we're like, okay, we have it set, and let's set this date, and let's get it going. And I think that's just part of what like I love to do, and what Soho's really good at is we know what we want to do, and we just jump on it right away, and we're like, let's try this
Right.
out, and let's see how it works, and let's make it work, right? So I think that was just perfectly aligned with what you guys wanted to do and with what the other speakers wanted to do. They're like, let's just get going on it and let's just make it work. And for me, I come from a real estate background and construction background myself. My dad he owned a landscape company, and then he started a kind of like rock water slide pool company.
Oh, nice.
So I've had that portion of the construction background with concrete, rebar, all the dirty part, right? And
The
then
fun part.
got, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then got into real estate back in like 2017. And I mean, even back then, just to see how much the market has changed, just how much like the tools that real estate agents have access to, and even construction industry, how much we have access to compared to 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's crazy. It's like how quickly we can make things happen, how many different automations there are. It's just like the list is never ending. And
Right.
so I'm excited we get to talk about that today. I took that real estate and kind of marketing background. When you're a real estate agent, you are also a marketer, right? Like
You are.
that's mostly what you have to do is you have to market yourself to leads. Like leads
Yes.
is the lifeblood of our business, right? So you really got to figure out like how do I get in front of people and how do I differentiate? Because there's 40, 50,000 different agents in Southern California that you have to deal with. And so to stand
And
out,
compete
like
against and stand out. Yeah.
exactly. So like for you, like picking ADUs as a niche and being like, I'm going all in on ADUs and I'm going to become the expert on ADUs to be able to help those people who it's such a large portion of the industry that's often overlooked. That like you also get advantage of, you can help someone buy the property to then build on. And the more partnerships you have there and the more you become that expert, company like Soho Construction, if you have a
Right.
client down here who wants to buy something, you have somebody who you know works quickly, can make it all happen, knows you, is going to help your client, and it's going to be a good experience, right?
Exactly. And a lot of people tell me all the time, like, well, how exactly do you monetize the ADU or the fact that you're niching down into ADUs? And for me, it's monetizing. Of course, we're all in it for business at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it's the relationships, right? Like the relationship that I made with you, and then the relationships that I connected everybody with by bringing some pretty dope speakers. It goes to show you that that's all just been through time and energy of doing meetups, and these relationships literally will translate into deals because through relationships we end up doing business together, right? And like you said, the people will come to me because of the simple fact that I know the ADU process. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's an advantage because it's so overwhelming, right? As you know, construction and real estate, especially with construction and building a project, you need a solid team. And so I think for homeowners and investors, many times it's overwhelming, and I'd like to hear your feedback in the luxury market. Like, what is it that what do those clients, or what are they looking for specifically when looking to hire a construction company or a realtor? I know that for me, it's just been able to provide value and streamlining the process for them. So being very knowledgeable in the space and adding this ADU as a skill set and as a niche has really helped me build a community overall, which I'm super, super grateful for because that's how you and I will continue to grow it, right? And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm very confident that if I have a luxury investor, right, who wants to buy and build in Solana Beach, I know you guys are the go-to, and vice versa, right? Like you guys know I'm also here to help, but it started off with the relationship, and so I think that for me is where it's at.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, dealing with like the high end clientele, it's the same exact conversation. Like we're having, a lot of it is just relational, and a lot of it, it's hard to track because a lot of people get frustrated because you can't track the numbers. Like you're like, oh,
Hmm.
I put X amount of dollars into this,
Right.
and what came out of it, right? And you don't know if something's going to come 6 months down the line or a year down the line that happened because of the one thing you spent $100 on, right?
Hmm.
So like it is a challenge tracking that. And I think a lot of people stay away from the space or stay away from niching down into something specific because the marketing dollars don't make sense when you just look at it on paper.
Right.
But then having that relationship, right, and building that relationship and spending the time to cultivate that relationship is huge. And for us in the luxury space, at least, a lot of it is just having like a lot of knowledge. Like if you're very knowledgeable, like you build trust right away. Like a lot of people think, well, I'm not smart enough, not cool enough. I can't make videos. I'm not that
Right.
guy, right? I'm too embarrassed to be in front, or like I have a buck tooth, like it's not going to work out, right? Everybody comes up with some sort of excuse.
Or girls,
Um,
like my makeup's not good, my hair's not good. There's
yeah,
always
yeah.
something, you know.
And in the reality, I mean, that's just not the case, because so many people, like, they value you because of the information that you know, right? And
Right.
it's like, I don't want to, if I've got a $4 million house that I need redone, or I want to go build, like, you might be the coolest, techiest guy in the world and be oh so smart at like showing off in your fancy car or whatever it happens to be. But
Right.
at the end of the day, you still have to build the house, and it still has to stand up, and it still has to work well, and it still has to be done quickly. So I'm not spending extra money. I've got all these projects elsewhere. I don't want to deal with 99 different things that are unknowns that come up that you didn't expect because you didn't know, right? And so that's our biggest thing, is gaining more knowledge, and just everything that we do, we write it down, we keep track of it, and we're like, okay, we got to make sure that if there is a mistake, we're learning from it, and here's how we solve it on the next one, right?
Right.
And that's just part of being in business, right? Everybody has to do that, but a lot of people don't write it down and track it, right? Which I think is part of where like automations today, part of where like management software today is very helpful, is you can see the mistakes, and you can see the things that went well, and you can see the whole conversation you've ever had with one client, right? All the
Right.
way through the list, and then you can review it, and it's all data right in front of your face. But I think a lot of people just don't know
They
how to
still won't
use
use
that
it,
data.
right?
Yeah, they
Like
just they,
a
they
lot
might
of
even write it down.
realtors,
Yeah,
don't even have a CRM. And if you do have a CRM, a lot of people will ask, well, what's a good CRM? And I always tell people it's the one that you're actually going to use,
yeah,
right? Because I heard
yeah.
that somewhere else, and it made total sense. Like, if you're not using the management software or platforms that are really going to help you streamline the process, then you're doing a disservice to yourself and to your clients, and you don't really know where to focus most of your energy because you're not tracking anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know like clearly where most of my business is coming from, which is Instagram, and through the meetups and the relationships, right? Those are probably the top two, but there's also other ones, but I'm always just trying to get better at tracking them as well, and seeing how I can double down on what's working, right? And then just really focus on that, because it's not that complicated. You just track what's there, and then you focus on what's working. And then
Hmm.
what's not, you gradually kind of tweak along the way, right? And I think prop tech and AI technology has really helped with that. So I'm super excited, because that was going to be one of the highlights of today's topic. When Nate and I talked last week and said, hey, let's do this episode, let's really highlight the prop tech side of things and how that integrates both, right? So construction and real estate and a lot of industries, have to have some sort of technology integrated into their system, because people want things now, and they want communication now, and they are expecting for you to have updates ASAP, right? And so how do you service many people? You can't scale without these tools. So as far as prop tech, what is your take on that? What do you think? I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, and you said, a lot has changed in the last 5 6 years. I would say even in the last 2 years, it's been crazy, like how quickly prop tech has been changing. And we talked about this at our meetup too. Miguel did an awesome job, and Neer did an awesome job on showing the prop tech side of things. But can you touch a little bit on that? Like, what's your take on prop tech, and what tools would you guys recommend, for people?
Yeah, I mean, so I usually break it down into like four different categories of prop tech. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but there's four that we all kind of use, and there's like our shared economy version of prop tech, which is the obvious ones are Airbnb, WeWork, those kind of things where it's like, this is just a shared space. I own this space and I'm renting it out to somebody else. And there's a technology platform that's handling all of that like intermediary process, and you
Right.
don't have to deal with it. And it's very like obvious now, and it seems like it's like, oh yeah, that's just everybody can get on Airbnb and do that. But 10 years ago that didn't really exist, and if it did,
Right.
it wasn't very great, right? And so we
The
tend to
lights
like
off.
overlook those kind of things. Oh, okay, yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
so
but
so
you're
I
right.
think people tend to overlook those kind of things and be like, oh yeah, that's, well, whatever, everybody's so used to it now.
Hmm.
And I think, like you're saying, like it happens so quickly that we just become so used to and accustomed to it. And we're like, oh yeah, that's just how it always is. Like I can go to the hotel, or I can pick this Airbnb. Oh, I can go work at this office and spend X amount of dollars, or I can spend a little bit less and have this shared space. And if I want to have this exclusive meeting, I'll pay the extra $200, right, for the
Right.
meeting space. And I mean, from that, you've got the smart home industry, which I think a lot of people overlook for, like, if you're an investor. A lot of people are just like, well, I'm buying the house, I'm fixing it up, I'm making it nice, and sure, I'll have a thermostat, like the Nest thermostat or
The
something. But
Nest. Hmm.
yeah, but they'll overlook that there's so much more out there that can help you track. And the biggest thing is maintenance, right? Like, a lot of people don't underestimate the expense on maintenance for a home, especially if you're buying like a multifamily place and you've got a lot more you have to maintain.
Right.
Roofs are very expensive to replace. Like, siding can be expensive to replace. If there's a water leak, all of that stuff starts to
Plumbing,
become
all
more
of that.
expensive.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different tools out there that you can use to track that stuff and get reminders that, like, hey, it's been a year since this has happened. It's time to do a little maintenance. It's time to check in on it, right? So, I mean, those things have been huge in the real estate space as an investor, but also for us, when we do a project, we don't want you to just get the project done and then forget about us, right? Like, we want to follow up with those kind of things. And for us, if we're doing 20, 40, 50 projects, like, we can't remember to follow up a year from today, like, that I need to do this. All right. So having
Right.
that integrated into your software where you can then get that follow up, and then you become kind of like their guide in everything. And you're now bringing more value to them. You on the real estate side could do the same thing. Like, you're explaining to them how these work, you're explaining to them what they are, how they can use them, they buy the property, and then you're also like, here's some things that, like, I would recommend you use in your property, or like an ADU that you're building. Here's some things I recommend, so you don't necessarily have to go in and look at it all the time, but
Right.
like a year from now, you can say, oh, these are some things I need to check. Or 5 years from now, like, I should probably do a check of the roof and have some guy come with a drone and see and take a look at it, or whatever you happen to do. But it's all designed to help you save money. I think a lot of people look at
Hmm.
prop tech and those kind of things and like, it's taking away from me, and like, I'm going to lose my job from this stuff. Like, I'm going to lose my job from AI. I'm going to lose my job from this. It's
No,
not
you're not.
really, yeah, it's like, it's not really, you're going to lose a lot of the kind of, I wouldn't say, I don't want to say boring, but a lot of the, like, minutia, right, of your
Exactly.
job.
All of the boring work and the tediousness
Mm-hmm,
of streamlining everything, like a lot of people right now with ChatGPT, which, by the way, ChatGPT has helped me tremendously in so many ways. Like, I use it for everything for my business. But the key word is I use it. Like, with AI and prop tech and construction technology and chat GPT, which falls under the umbrella of AI, it's all it's all relative if you don't use it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to use these platforms, and you have to just, they're not going to take away your jobs. I think if anything, they're just going to help you do a lot more in a shorter time period and service a lot more people, and just make it an overall great experience for yourself and for the people that you're working with, right? And you're right. Like, there's no way that I could remember to call back, 100 or 200 past clients. Social media has helped, and
mm-hmm.
keeping up with people, but I definitely do try to just always do a better job of calling them back and have it like set in my CRM, where it's like year date, due date for me to call them and see where we're at, even with their financials, right? Like, how much equity they've built, and can they build an ADU with what they have and maybe maximize space. Like, these are things that your average consumer is just not thinking about on a day-to-day basis. And then, when push comes to shove and you've got some sort of maintenance request that you were just like pushing on the back burner, and that comes about, you're kind of you're caught with the deer in the headlights, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to fix this plumbing issue that could have been avoided had you set those reminders. And the way to set those reminders is through technology. So I think overall, embracing technology is what I'm saying. It's here to stay, and it's here to help us because it needs us in order to function.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a
Exactly.
two-way street. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and it's from reminders to actual tools that you put on, like the pipe. If there's a leak that happens, boom, shuts it off, right? There's a valve that goes in and
Hmm.
emergency shuts it off. Like, we use those in condos all the time, for like when I did property management, like our condos, the biggest worry people had being upstairs was what if my water heater goes out, right? Like, and I get a
Right.
big leak and it floods downstairs. Like, there's a lot of different tools out there that nowadays will track when there's a leak that happens and right away will shut off. Like you get a little shut off valve and boom, you've saved them thousands of dollars, potentially or tens of thousands of dollars, right? And it's just
Right.
small things that you can add and you can just talk to clients about to be like, hey, I'm going to take the 5 minutes to research this. And then now I'm going to
Give
share
you
this with my
value.
client and give you
Yeah.
value. Yeah. And that's how
Hmm.
you get those higher end clients, right? Because they care about that kind of stuff. They're like, I want to have all that. And I don't want to research myself, honestly. Like
They don't have
if
the
you,
time or energy, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's like, and even if they do, it's like, it doesn't really matter. Like that's our job. Like we should be doing
Yeah.
this, right? Like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have the time to do that. I'm so busy making phone calls. Like, well, that's your job, right? If you want to be in the real estate industry or you want to be in the construction industry, like, your job is to know those things, right? And you don't want to
I
get
agree
passed up.
100%.
Yep. And I
Yes.
think
Like,
and I think that's the AI part that people get concerned about because it's like
mhm.
other people will take advantage of that and learn easily what like chat gpt, just even chatbots on a site, right? They're
Right.
so good these days, even though it might be delayed data, they might not have stuff from 2022 and 2023, right? But like that will
It's still
eventually come,
pretty spot on, and
right?
it's
And there's
exactly. I
yeah,
mean, ChatGPT has data pulled up to 2021, which is still crazy. Like that
yeah.
was just 2 years ago. So eventually that, I mean, it's just going to keep growing rapidly, and you have to be comfortable with changing,
Hmm.
and pivoting and embracing it, because that's the only way to help as many people and make those solid like connections and relationships with people.
Hmm.
For me at least, it's helped a lot, and I highly encourage it to other realtors to really embrace technology. And I think sometimes it's just overwhelming for people. So if you don't know, connect with people. Like I try to build a very dope community where we're all just, it's a safe space for people to come and be vulnerable and talk about what it is that they need. I tell realtors all the time that if they learn more about ADUs or prop tech or just giving more value to the client and adding more skill sets to the table, that's going to translate into, like you said, a better quality lead, because you're now providing much better quality value. And that
Exactly,
you're
exactly.
attracting what you are really. So I think for me, that's just the growth that I've seen for myself. I can't speak for other people, but and even doing the event at your guys' space, like I was not part of, and this, I'm not really in the luxury space, but it was very dope to see the contrast and how we both integrated the two. And even the topics of discussions that we had were pretty spot on. We talked about VR, we talked about prop tech, con tech, a lot of things that may go over people's heads. So if we're talking, too advanced for you guys, we're trying to really just simplify it and dumb it down and really tell you guys that it's here for you guys to embrace it and really just use it to your advantage. Use it for your business and for your clients, and try not to let it intimidate you as much as I think it intimidates people. It's just a limited belief.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's just so many great. And again, I just don't know how many times we can reiterate like the more knowledge you have, the better off you'll be. These tools are designed to help you either gain more knowledge or be able to look something up very quickly and not have to read through a bunch of different advertisements of everyone's site that generally they say roughly the same thing. You don't have, you're just saving time, right? And it's allowing
You're
you
like
to then
filtering out through
exactly.
data much quicker than it would manually, right? Like when I was doing property management in Palm Springs, we were using AppFolio as a
Mhm.
CRM. But I don't think that at that time she even had anything integrated where we would get reminders. I mean, I would have to manually go in there and see what other maintenance requests had we had in the past for that property, and then kind of, you know, forecast when it would be needed again, or if we needed to just replace it. Whereas now, like I could think about it, it would take me all day to kind of go through the 200 properties, if not a
Mhm.
couple of days. Now you can do that in seconds, right? If you have the right tools integrated into your software. and it's so much smoother. You get a lot of time back as well for yourself. Now you can focus on other things and add other skill sets to the table. For me, like I said, it's my crunch time. I've done so much in like 80% of the work, right? And then 10% is really taking that action and implementation. And so that for me is like speed and
Mm,
time that I'm saving for myself. Now I can focus on doing more meetups, right? Because for the meetups, I was doing like all the templates, all the before, during, and after emails. Like all the emails that I shared with you guys, those a lot were ChatGPT sponsored or generated. But it helps me. Like that's how you take action, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have got the event done in 35, 45 days, guys. Like literally, we threw a full event in the time that it would take for you to buy a home, or at least like
mm,
30
yeah,
days.
yeah.
So it was through technology, and I think that was a great example of it. And then it's technology with relationships, and that I think for me that's where it's at. It's just embracing it and continue to bring on more people like you who are actually doing it, and how you guys are implementing it and using it and embracing it for sure. That's where it's at.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something too. If like people have questions for like what we're actually doing to how do I make this work? Like I have the idea or I've done a little bit of research, but there is a lot out there, right? There's so many different avenues you can take, so many different tools you can take or you can use, but it's like which ones do you actually use or which ones are actually important? Because you can spend a
To
lot of
you.
money. Yeah, you
Mhm.
can spend a lot of money on a tool that you don't really need or a tool that's kind of only one portion and there's another one that covers everything, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot that work together. Like Zapier is a great tool to connect a lot of
A
different
lot.
things. Yeah, you can connect a lot. And when we talk about those automations, like when one click of the button sends out seven different things, fills in your CRM automatically. Like there's a lot that can happen that you just set up on the back end, and then your business kind of runs on autopilot. And it allows you to go for real estate, go sell more homes, for construction, go build more homes, right? I'm
Right.
less focused on click this button, send this to him, figure out where it goes, right? It all just happens and it just flows. And it's just nice. Like it's nice to see, honestly. It's for me, I'm somebody who like I love to see the flow of something. Like click this, go here, go here,
Go
go
there.
here, and like
Yeah.
happen automatically. And then the next one, fill out, fill out,
And
fill
the
out.
beauty
Like
to it is that now
it's
it's
so
like
nice.
no, there's no excuses now, right? Because you can prompt all that. I'll share it with you, and if anybody on here wants me to share it with them, just DM us on the back channels, and ask for the Chat GPT prompts. So I have literally about 500 different prompts that you can use. So even if you don't know how to prompt Chat GPT, I can show you how, right? And you can
Mm-hmm.
create SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. You can create workflows. So, and in a matter of seconds, now the time that it took you to actually build out and create all those workflows and systems and processes, it's happening in seconds. And now you just have to tailor it to your business, and that's it. Like it doesn't get any much easier than that. And so I think looking at that's just one angle where I could say that for realtors or even contractors, right? Because we're talking construction. Realtors, just like contractors, a lot of them do not use a CRM. They don't have a place where they're funneling all their leads and all their database and categorizing them and then taking strategic automated actions, for each client. Like, I have a tab where I have all my like IG leads, which I talk to differently than your online leads or your open house leads or your ADU leads, or you know what I mean? Like it's you're able to do so much within the CRM, but the hard part I think is getting that firsthand structure right, and like making sure that everything's organized. But the jumpstart is super easy now with ChatGPT if you just become good at prompting. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, you know, ChatGPT is going to take a lot of jobs," which I think it will. But if you look at the opportunity, what I see is that, if you become a good prompter, whoever, they may eliminate 10 marketing directors and keep one, but that one has to be very good at prompting Chat GPT and creating more content. And, I'm kind of going off topic here, but I'm just really passionate about it because I think
Hmm.
if more realtors and contractors used it, and used AI and used prop tech, they would be in a much better place for themselves too. You know, you're running around crazy, not knowing how to run a business, and entrepreneurship itself is very lonely sometimes if you don't have the right team and if you don't have the right people around you. So you really have to like tap into community to understand how to integrate these tools, because you hear it like good CRM, good this, good that, but why is it good for your business? How is it going to help you elevate, you know, your game and in your business, right?
Yeah, and I think there's caveats, right? Like ChatGPT, fantastic tool, but there's also some stuff that you don't want to do with it. Like there's a lot of people who are like, I have this great idea. I'll just go on ChatGPT and I'll get like 1,000 blog posts, like all written for free by it, and then I'm going to go
Right.
post them all today on Google, and I'll have this great website, and I can start monetizing, advertising, not really realizing that like Google knows that you can do that stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like Google doesn't, even if you wrote it by hand, Google doesn't award you for posting 1,000 blog posts in a day, right? Like they're going to flag
Right.
you and say like, yeah, we're not going to show this site. There's something fishy going on, right? And there's
Right.
like part of the SEO process and part of learning, part of knowledge is like you have to make sure that you're using tools correctly, right? And so like there is this whole learning curve that everyone's kind of going through on like how much of chat GPT type of tools can I use? Like if I post that whole prompt, like the whole response on my site, like is eventually something going to tag and flag that as like this was generated by AI? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of tools out there that flag other tools. There's a lot of bots that track that kind of stuff that are like, we don't want the whole world to become a repetitive, like because we use that stuff
Exactly.
to learn, right? Like I don't want to go on the website or go on Google, type in like how to frame a ADU, and then get 60 of the exact same article on
Right.
how to frame an ADU written by ChatGPT, because that's not going to help us advance. That's not going to help us progress. And we're going to just be reiterating the same thing
And very
over and over and over
robotic
and
with
robotic.
it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's like, there's still that aspect of like, you need to then take it and make it human, right? Like it's
Exactly.
really good at sounding human, but like
But it
everybody else is
doesn't
also
have
going
that
to get that same
emotional.
prompt. Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you need to put your voice into it. And that's where I think like people who are creators, people who are marketers, people who are anything where you are posting something out for the public to read, like you still need to make a very good effort at being human. Like whether it's in the first paragraph you're talking about like a personal anecdote, like whatever it happens to be, like everybody
That
knows these
human
tools
touch.
exist. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so I think a lot of people assume that like, oh, I see it on Twitter all the time. A lot of like, these are 20 things you need to do to become great at your business. And I'm like, yeah, that was
Hmm.
probably just written by ChatGPT, to be honest. And
Yeah. And
why
people
not?
will
Like,
know because you're right. ChatGPT
mm-hmm,
will spit out everything and it's very great at sounding awesome, but it does not have that human connection. So I think that's where people should not feel intimidated because, like I said, at the end of the day, we have that human touch, that human connection, and only we can create relationships, right? And AI needs us in order to function. So you do have to put that human touch. I agree 100%, and I think that people just need to connect with us. They really do. Connect with
mm-hmm,
people that are looking to change and looking to embrace these types of technologies, but understanding how they're going to use them correctly and why, right? And just figuring out your purpose. Like that's where it's going to come from. And if you guys need help with that, make sure you guys reach out to us. What other thing that were we going to touch on? I mean, you kind of touched on a lot of things. I think just to kind of recap here, I mean, we've talked about prop technology, your background in construction and or landscaping, right? You mentioned your
mm-hmm,
dad was had a company, so I mean a lot. We talked about a lot. Also, the real estate market, which we didn't touch on much, but I will ask you, like, where do you see the market and also ADUs, since that's kind of our little
yeah,
niche.
yeah.
Well, where do you see that in the next 2 to 5 years or so?
So I'll go 6 months out. I like to do things 6 months
Okay,
out because 2 to 3 years, so much stuff can change. Like we've seen,
you're
like
right.
so much stuff is just unpredictable that far out. But you can kind of gauge where things are going in the next 6 months because we have all the data for the last year and the last 6 months, right?
Hmm.
So I like to look at like the actual CPI data, right? Like when we're looking at inflation, when we're looking at interest rates, They post all of that data for free that we can go look at. But a lot of
Hmm.
people, instead of looking at it, will just follow the news, which is one thing that irks me about Instagram, like real estate people, is the market will clearly change, yet it takes a month or two for people to be like, oh
To
yeah, it actually
follow.
is changing, and follow
Right,
it. And
right.
then in the middle of it changing, they're like, oh yeah, this is the thing. Like, here's the problem. Here's what you need to do instead. And then the market begins to shift again in the opposite direction, yet they're still spitting out the same information
Right.
because they're just not reading. The data's there. They're just not looking at it. They're not understanding it. And they're just waiting to hear kind of what like the overall media will say, and then they're going to
And
follow
then just
that tune,
summarize
right?
it and follow. Right.
And exactly. And so to me, I look at the real estate market and I'm like, okay, if we're actually looking at the CPI numbers and we're comparing them to 12 months ago, right? 12 months ago, we're looking at like 1.4%, 0.6%, like 1.8%, like these big jumps month over month. And then when you look at it, the 12-month period, like December's numbers from December 2022 to December 21, you have like 1.6%, but then you have negative 0.1, right? And
Yeah.
so you're sitting there and you're like, everyone's still spouting the same thing that like, oh no, it's end of the day is like put your head down and wait another year because nothing's good is going to happen, right? But
Hmm.
like we're already seeing it right now, like that shift where the numbers that are going to come out this year, if they're even if they're 0.3, zero point 0.4 like percent year over year change, like that's a lot less than last year's
Right.
1.6s, right? Like, and those are the numbers that are going to come out and they're going to say, oh, it's gone down 3.4%. Like you're going to all of a sudden see these different numbers, but you're going to be late because you're waiting for the media to tell you those numbers. When in reality,
Right.
you can just look at it right now and look and see based on the trend, like we're probably in a good space. Like if you're looking just at like
The last two,
listings,
3 years.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. But if you're looking at listings right now and you have a listing
Hmm.
and you have an open house, right? The number of people going to open houses right now and putting multiple
It's
bids
like
on,
literally
it's
night and
coming
day.
back up, right?
It's
And
coming
this is
back up.
within
Hmm.
yeah, and this is within 3 months. And like it is coming back up very fast and we're only in February, right?
Right.
This is usually stuff that happens in late March, April, May, June. But
I
those numbers
agree.
are hitting us already in February because I think a lot of people put their heads down and said, I'm not going to deal with this. Like, this is too much. I'm just going to wait it out. And then very savvy buyers are now like, well, hey, like this house is $50,000, $60,000 less than it was last year.
Less.
Maybe I
Right.
should jump on this, right? And
Hmm.
maybe it's a good deal. And so we're seeing those homes that have been sitting there for a month, 2 months on the market, which was rare a year and a half ago. And now those are just getting picked up right away because people are starting to jump back on the train and they're like, okay, well, interest rates are down slightly, not crazy, like they're down compared to where they
But
were.
I think the buyer psychology has just caught up to reality too, like you're
But
saying.
sellers hasn't is my thing is buyer psychology is like we're jumping in and we're ready.
Right.
Sellers are still kind of on the fence. They're still doing different stuff. They just put money into remodeling their home maybe instead of selling it because they're like, oh, the market's in disarray,
And you know,
right?
you're
And
so right
so
about that because I have a listing right now which was very slow for,
mhm,
I mean, I also listed it in November. So November, December was slow.
mhm,
January, we did another price reduction. And it was around the time when interest rates went from like 6.5 to 7 or 6.25 to 7. So it was just like bad timing. And I explained this to my seller, right? And she's very knowledgeable. She understands it, but I think it's still that psychology and emotional attachment to the property that they don't want to adjust a 50 or $70,000 decrease, or price reduction. But once we did that, I told her, the market will dictate what they're willing to pay for your property. And sure
yep.
enough, we have two offers. So I think I got to do that after this too, so we can open escrow. But you know what I mean? Like it does take time, I think, for people, for the end consumer, and for realtors to catch up with reality and where we're at now. And yeah, you're right about the open houses. They have been so packed in the last 2, 3 weeks, which is shocking to me because I built most of my business through open houses at the beginning, which was what, like 2016, 2017. Open houses were like, you know, always packed. I would get like 40, 50 groups in a
Mm-hmm.
weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of died down after COVID. And so open houses were pretty dead. Not to mention, we were in a very crazy market where things were just flying off the shelves. So you didn't even get an opportunity to have an open house. It was just gone. You listed
Mm-hmm.
Friday and it was gone Monday. So now that properties are sitting a little bit longer, which is not longer, it's just the norm. Like, it hasn't been the norm for the last 2, 3 years. Now the norm is, yes, your property may be listed for 2 to 4 weeks or maybe even longer than that, right? And it's just going to take time for people. But I see it coming back. And I definitely think that you're right. It's only February when typically things should be like this in March, April, May. So I can only imagine what, April, May, and June, yeah, was gonna look like. And
Yeah.
what's his name? Sydney talked about that too. The numbers you just broke down. He always says when looking at the comps, like go back 12 months on data and track that, and that in itself will give you your reality and
Yeah,
numbers.
and I mean, if you go on like CPI, BLS, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics,
Hmm.
you'll see those numbers. If you're a real estate agent or even if you're construction, because this is huge in construction. A lot of people just don't understand like the construction market because we talk about it in real estate so often, and real estate agents are very loud and proud about the market, right? And people are concerned because they all own
Yeah.
homes, right? But fewer people really pay attention to the construction market. But like interest rates really affect us. And what we notice happens is
Yes.
when sellers are not selling the homes because they're just not selling, a lot of times they're like, well, if I'm not going to sell it, and maybe I'm not going to sell it this year, like they will tend to do a remodel, tend to do renovations that they didn't do
Right.
before, right? And so a lot of those come up for us that we can take advantage of. And then when buyers are buying tons of homes very quickly, and especially in the marketplace we had, you'd buy a ton, but like a lot of people weren't putting a lot of money into their home to fix it up because they're like, I don't need to. I can just sell it how it is, right? And then
Right.
somebody buys that, and then that's where you're going to be really on top of like who's buying the homes. How do I get in front of those people? Like somebody who just bought a house, the
Hmm.
likelihood that they're going to do some sort of construction project is miles higher than the guy who's lived there for 5 years, right? Like it's
100%.
just the reality. Most people move in and they're like, well, I want to change this up a little bit, or I have this idea for this. Even if it's a
Hmm.
small project, even if you're just a handyman, like most people tend to do something to that house because they want to
Right.
make it their own, right? Or they have this great big vision for what they want to do, or they're an investor who is like, I am flipping this property. Like, and like, you
Hmm.
might not get that deal right there if it is an investor, but talking to that investor, if you're a construction person, and building a relationship right there, like, hey, I
A
noticed you
relationship.
bought this home and are flipping it and turning around. And now
Hmm.
I'm talking face to face with an investor who, like, how many times do you get to talk face to face with the investor who's talking about their property that they're remodeling or refixing or building right now, or building the ADU right now? Like, you
Right.
get all of that right there just by paying attention and just by showing up and walking in front of
Showing
them
up.
and
I always
walking in
say
front of the project. Just show up. Yeah.
showing up is like half the battle for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I know I talked my
Awesome.
hands a bunch too, but sorry about that.
No, and we can keep talking,
But
but I do have to head out in a bit. I
yeah,
really want to
same here.
thank you. Thank you so much, Nate. I'm so glad that we did this because it was great for us. It was only right that we did it because after the dope meetup that we had, which honestly I want to run it back. I think we should do another one sometime this year and just keep the consistency and the
Hmm.
momentum going. And we'll be sharing on social media, so make sure you guys follow Nate, follow Zoho Construction. And just to kind of recap, if you don't mind, maybe we can recap a little bit of what we talked about, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, so we started prop tech. I think a lot of people like in just
Hmm.
the technology space. There's just so much out there. So I would just start researching just small things at a time. Like, why is Airbnb successful? And like, how do I take advantage of Airbnb? We have AirDNA, right? Like, you can
Right.
get all of that data and check it out and you can learn from it. There's a lot of great resources on YouTube. If you don't understand the data, you can learn how to understand the data, right? And like, all of that just helps you. Like, all of those different things, prop tech wise, like, it's there to help the consumer, but then at the
Right.
end of the day, if you are the guide for the consumer, right, like it is also there to help you and you can learn it and then teach the consumer who probably doesn't know. They might know like the keywords, but they probably don't know as much as you think they know. You might think like, oh, I don't know that much either. But like you probably know more than them, right? And
More
if you
than the
can
average. Yeah, that's
exactly,
so
and if you
true.
can continue to build that knowledge, then you can pass that on to clients and then they're going to say, yeah, that guy's cool or that girl's cool. Like she brought me a ton of value and I learned all this
Right.
stuff that now I'm taking advantage of with this property that I bought and I'm renting out this one unit. So I can afford to actually live there and I'm saving money and putting it in my 401k and all these great things that happen because Steph, the real estate agent, mentioned one little thing about ADUs or one little thing about if I did
That
a
opened my
conversion or rented it.
mindset
Yeah,
to other things. Yeah.
yeah, and that's where the real value is, and I think that's where you get those repeat clients, and you get the higher end clients, the higher that you go, because you're bringing value that you didn't put on this sales pitch, like you didn't do anything out of the ordinary. You just gave them information, right?
Right.
And so I think take advantage of PropTech, take advantage of tools like ChatGPT, the new tools that will come out, because in 6 months, if you don't think there's going to be 20 more versions of
Oh yeah.
ChatGPT that are a lot better,
There's
you're just
already a whole
under a
bunch
rock,
that I
right?
could
Like,
name. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you are so far beneath the rock, like you're just
Hmm.
digging to try to meet the bottom of the rock, right? Like
Oh yeah.
there are so many great tools that will come out, and it will be fast, and it will be a lot and overwhelming, but just 30 minutes at night, go on, research, and just play with them and mess with them because then you can use that knowledge to make your business faster. You'll be able to get more leads and eventually
Right.
get more deals, right? And
And
we
build more
want to help.
relationships. Yeah.
Exactly. And we want to help real estate agents get there. We want to share what we do with real estate agents to help them get there because when real estate agents do well, and it came from us, like they're going to help us too. And they're going to send their clients
Exactly.
our way and like vice versa. When you guys have tools like Steph, you've shared tons of stuff with us. But
Hmm.
like we love because we get to use it, right? And it gets to help
Right.
us get our clients or communicate better with our clients or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, honestly, just being on the podcast, I just love one talking about this stuff. It really excites me.
Me
But
too.
then two, like I just love that this relationship just happened from an Instagram DM, which I think is just so cool because people talk about it all the time, then they
Right.
never actually do it, or they send some spammy DM. But like it
Hmm.
was a very intentional conversation of just like, yeah, let's make
And
this work.
honestly, at
And
first, I
then
did think it was like spam. I'm like, who is this guy? What is this? Because obviously, I didn't know your name. I just saw
yeah,
Zoho Construction, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I've made a lot of connections like this just by responding to the DM. So I would say respond to them, take action. If you vibe with the person, if you align with them, you can do very dope things like Nate and I. And I'm super grateful. I mean, we're like the really good friends now. And I think that it just all happened the way it was supposed to. Like it was very
Mm-hmm.
natural, but it was very quick and intentional. And I act the same way, and even if we don't know it, like we'll figure it out. There was a lot of logistics on the back end that we almost didn't have the event or maybe pushed it out a little bit more, but I like how we just both were like, okay, let's figure it out and let's do it and take action. And it turned out to be better than we expected. And we made so many connections and we highlighted you guys, which was awesome. And now I have a team of people that I could say I know, like, and trust in Solana Beach. And that all came from a DM. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you, Nate. Make sure you guys follow him. I'll go ahead and share this episode on my YouTube channel, and I will also have it on Spotify and Buzzsprout. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you guys so much. Peace out.
See you guys.